to Mind Escape. Are you ready?
Are you ready to escape your mind?
Hello, Mind Escapees. If you have not already, please go check out my other channel, Masters of Rhetoric. I will have the link down below. It's also part of the Mind Escape LinkTree link. It's something I'm very passionate about, where I dissect the origins of Western thought through the pre-Socratic thinkers, all the way to Aristotle, and I'm probably going to go beyond that as well at some point. But right now I'm focused on the Ionian physicists all the way to Aristotle. So please support Masters of Rhetoric. Go check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. There's tons of shorts on there already, as well as episodes. And there's a bunch of episodes lined up. I'm on all audio platforms with it. And if you're on TikTok, Instagram, X, or any of the social media platforms, please go check out our page on there as well. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Tonight we have an amazing episode with friend of the show and author Matthew Pallamary. If you don't know who Matthew is, please go check out our previous episodes. We have some on our YouTube channel and our audio platforms, as well as some vaulted in our Patreon. So please go check those out. Matthew is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to everything psychedelic, psychedelia, ayahuasca. He's also an amazing writer who writes nonfiction and fiction, and his fictional works are very interesting, and I highly recommend them. He has a new book coming out called Drug Wars, A New Dope, which releases on November 12th. He's just a really all-around great guy to talk to, and he's always got interesting insights into things. And this is a conversation that I always love having when I know he's going to come on, because I can just pick his brain on the creative process and being a writer and how that kind of plays into the whole psychedelic experience thing and how descriptive detail plays into it. So please go check out his books. I have the link down below all the way at the bottom. He's got, let's see here, how many books? He's working on his 23rd book. So this is not somebody that does this in their spare time. He is a professional writer. So please support him, and I hope you enjoy the show. All right, Matthew, welcome back on the show. It's been a little bit, but you've probably been on the show more than most people. I want to say you're probably near the top of people we've had on the most, and it's always a great conversation. You're always in the midst of writing some new awesome books, so welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I hope I haven't bored anybody yet, and I hope I'm not going to overexpose myself, because you can get arrested for that, right?
Last time we spoke, we were talking about your new book. I believe it was The Hummingbird Whisperer. And now we just were talking off air a little bit, and you're working on a new book on the history of ayahuasca and the connection to the tribes and everything like that. Can you give us a little bit of maybe a little taste of what's to come with that?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on, by the way. I always love being here and good, intelligent conversation. So I researched ayahuasca for 10 years before I found it. And since then, I've also been working directly with it for 25 years. I've been to the jungle tons of times. I'm losing track. I think I've done 14 10-day ayahuasca dietas, plant diets. I've been leading ceremonies for years. I've worked in different traditions. At the peak of it, I was doing it 30 times a year. Now a lot of my mentors have passed away and all that, and I'm carrying the torch, and I realized that all this research and study I've done, much of which people are not aware of, that it was time for me to write the definitive book about ayahuasca based on all of my research and my personal knowledge and experience with it. Because I want people to go into it with their eyes wide open. there's the woo-woo stories, and you hear every once in a while somebody died because of something, and it's not for everybody, but if you're going to do it, you should have your eyes wide open and be fully aware of everything. So I really want to bring all that to the forefront. It's one of the reasons I do so many interviews, because I want people to go in here, blow your brains out if you want, but have your eyes open and know what you're doing, as opposed to going in ignorant and ending up not coming back, and losing your life. So I'm going all the way back to prehistory. And prehistory, because it's prehistoric, nobody knows how long it's been around for. But prehistory begins with mythologies. You start, because that's how far back it goes. Whether Jesus did this or that, or Jesus is alive or wasn't and coming back, and all that stuff has its basis in myth, because that's how far back it goes. And we don't really know it. And a lot of times one culture will pick up the other culture's myth and kind of slap a new coat of paint on it, and send it out again. It's like a lot of the Egyptians did. The kings would come and the new guy would come in and he'd wipe out all the stuff from the first guy and then put his name on it and take credit, like that. Anyway, I want people to be aware. So I go from all that, and then I go into the first Westerners who were involved, which we were talking about. Richard Spruce from England originally, and then Richard Evans Schultes. And Schultes had Wade Davis and Mark Plotkin, among other people, as proteges. And then that got into the whole Ginsberg and Burroughs, the Yahé letters, if anybody knows about that history. Anyway, I bring all that up, and then I get into the beginnings of the first churches, because originally there were no churches. It was like tribes out in the jungle doing it, and that was their thing. So I have all of the history of the churches and how they evolved in the beginning, up to present day, and the legalities of it. And then now what's going on with this big outburst of ayahuasca churches. They're everywhere now, setting the precedent of freedom of religion over drug enforcement, that whole thing. And then I bring it even up more to modern times. So I have a long questionnaire that people can take to realize all the things about ayahuasca, the diet, and that this is dangerous and that's dangerous. If with the MAO inhibitors, and if you're mixing it with other things, particularly antidepressants, SSRIs, you're preloading your synapses, whatever, with serotonin, and then you're taking more, and you can go into convulsions and you can die. I mean, that's a
We've
fact.
talked about too, like Toei or Brugmansia, the adding in the Datura into the mixture. I mean, Datura on its own is pretty, nightmarish. So I can't imagine adding that into the mix.
We did it for a couple of years, some years back, but we only put like 2 or 3 leaves in like a big brew. And I could feel the energy and have the sense of it, if that makes any sense. But after that little bit of time of experimenting, the shaman said, we don't need that. We got chacruna for plenty of colors, and we just don't need the extra stuff. But it was a worthwhile experiment. It's like, I may be done ayahuasca during the day like a dozen times. I prefer it at night, but it was a worthwhile experience to do it during the day. Just like one time way back, I went to a weekend of ceremonies and I was a sitter and took care of everybody. And I wanted to learn that side of it too, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go through all that and bring it up to present day, and then sort of safe practices. And I'm probably going to do a little section on each of the plants. When you do the 10-day dieta, you work with another plant or plants. So I'm going to do like, Bobinsana, Chuchuwasi, Ushpawasha, Uña de Gato, Wayusa, Chirixanango, all those plants. I'm going to do almost like what Sasha Shogun did. I'm going to do a thing on the plants. This is what the plant is, genus, species, not overdone, but here's the scientific. Here's what they call it. And then here's my experience with it. Sasha did that in Pikal and Tikal. One One of the interesting things about ayahuasca is that all of the knowledge you get is purely subjective. You can read all the books in the world written by everybody in all the galaxies about ayahuasca, and you're still not going to know what it's like until you do it, right? So it, by its very nature, it makes the book itself subjective. So there's a little bit of personal aspect to it, as opposed to being like strict. I'm the authority. I'm the teacher. I'm the professor, and A equals B. No, this is in my head, so I'm even maybe subject to misinterpretation. But here's my 35 years of research and experience for what it's worth. And as I mentioned, I've been leading ceremonies for close to 20 years, so I've seen almost everything. And I want people to be educated and open and aware of what it really is. What can it really do? What can it not really do? Where does it come from? Like you said, that's always fascinated me. How the hell you go in the jungle? Everything looks the same. I mean, it's all green, And how do they know these two plants? So I got a couple of quirky old mythology stories from some of the tribes, but there are numerous combinations of plants that they use down there aside from the ayahuasca, and there are numerous variations of the ayahuasca brew. The standard one is ayahuasca vine with chacruna, Psychotria viridis, and ayahuasca's Monastereopsis copy, and that mixture. And ayahuasca is the power, and chacruna is the light. That's what they say. Yeah. Because the power potentiates the light to come. Because without the vine, you don't get the visions. Anyway,
I'm psyched for that book to come out. Like I said, we were talking offline. I mentioned Andrew Gallimore's book, Death by Astonishment. The first few chapters are about the history a little bit. The Richard Spruce, the William Burroughs, the Yahe letters, all that. But I would like to know more from like the indigenous side of things too. Like where did they come up with it? What does their myths or their history say about it?
That's what I'm gonna hit.
Yeah, no, I'm super pumped for that. And obviously we'll have you back on when that.
Oh yeah, when that one pops, because it's, I'm a writer, but in many respects, ayahuasca has become my life's work. Certainly, my passion for altered states go back as far as I can remember. I even can get myself dizzy as a little kid until I almost puked, right? All of that and all that experience has come to bear. And the other thing that's come to bear on a lot of the shamanic stuff and energy is the fact that I have a background in computers and electronics. Electronics is the study of energy. And shamanism is about mastering energy. And drinking ayahuasca is about mastering the energies of your thoughts and your, getting your psyche turned on its head and figuring out how to navigate it and make sense out of it. And what can it show you from seeing things in such a radically altered perspective from what we consider to be baseline. So I want people to be aware. It drives me nuts when I see some of the Hollywood crap with all how they make ayahuasca look. And, God, I saw this one show and this guy's sitting with a guru and he's got a freaking a hookah pipe and he's talking to his friend. Yeah, I'm doing an ayahuasca session with my guru. And I'm like, oh, God. Those people don't know. So I want people to be aware, awake and aware. I think it's powerful medicine. I think it's needed now more than ever. It also has great potential for abuse if you don't pay attention to what you're doing and who you're working with. And, there have been some of the deaths that have come were from people working too much with tobacco, in terms of ayahuasca. Because I worked with a tobacco shaman one time.
So like tobacco snuff or what?
No, so I don't know if you know this or not, but they use nicotine in bug poison. And if you take high doses of nicotine, the effect it has, what it does to the bugs and what it does to you is it fills your lungs with fluid, and you basically kind of drown. So there have been a few cases of people who were working with tobacco. Who I remember one in particular I was following some few years back, and it was a younger woman, but she was like very thin. She weighed like 98 pounds, and so what they gave her for the dosage for the tobacco overwhelmed her. You know, I had another friend I was studying shamanic stuff with, and he did one of their tobacco fast or cleanse or dietas, and his kidneys got infected. So there's been a lot of misuse. You know, the other thing that drives me crazy is I see sometimes, come to us for our shamanic spiritual weekend. We're going to do 5-MeO on Friday night and ayahuasca on Saturday, and then we're going to do mushrooms on Sunday, and, you know, maybe we'll smoke some more toad on Monday. I mean, I don't think it's right. It's not the way, it's overkill. Do one thing, stick with it, stick with the old ways that are tried and true through millennia, you know. All this stuff, like, you know, you might as well go to a drugstore. Hey, man, what do you want? You know, back in the day, what do you want? Uppers, downers, Coke, smack, acid. What do you want? We got it right here. You know, step right up, right? It's too much. It's like, oh, this is good. I guess if I take a bunch of more everything else, it's going to be better. I'm going to be enlightened because I took so much shit, right?
Yeah, I think the macro is always the way to go. If you have truly like a real transcendent experience or something awe-inspiring or you know, an experience like that on a macro dose, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca, whatever, you don't want to do it again for a while. Like you want to sit on it, you want to marinate on it, you want to
you want to integrate it.
Yeah, you want to integrate it into your life. But you know, there is people that take things too far, and they do. You know, one time isn't enough, or it's not even like they're physically, you know, the compounds are physically addictive. It's just that they're, you know, I don't know.
They're greedy. I've seen people die because of that. You know, it's something that really needs to be respected. I never thought at first, Jesus, I did everything when I was younger, and then in my early 20s, I took a break. I was a vegetarian for 23 years, and I went totally baseline for 13 years. I wouldn't even take an aspirin if I had a headache. I thought, I want to clear the decks and see things clear. You know, listen to me, I'm being redundant. Anyway, when I first read Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods, and I thought, spirituality and altered states, are you shitting me? And then I went and I got the book that him and Dennis wrote, the Austin Oric, the mushroom one. And
True
undercover.
Hallucinations.
No, the other one. The Mushroom Grower's Guide by Austin Oric.
Yeah.
That's what they said, but it was those guys.
Yeah.
I spent $1,000. This is back in the mid-90s, and I bought all the shit. And it took me 3 tries and fails, so I finally grew my own mushrooms. And started taking them with a spiritual intention, as opposed to, oh, no, I'm going to get fucked up. What's this going to do to me? You know, with that intention. And started having some kind of magical experiences. And then once I started doing that, eventually, I won't go into the whole story unless you want me to go off on a tangent, but I found out about the ethnobotany seminars. And I went, the first one was in San Francisco in 96. And I went, and I met the tribe. And I met Ann and Sasha Shogun. And at the time, Sasha was getting hassled by the government for publishing Pikal and Tikal. And I didn't have any money, but I gave Ann like $5-10, maybe 20. I didn't have any, but I just dare. She wrote me a 2-page letter, handwritten, thanking me. And then from then I started going more and more and more and more, and got into the whole thing. And then I was already fascinated with shamanism. Um, Altered state, spirituality, shamanism. You mean they could all be the same thing? Are you shitting me? Wow, I'm in heaven, right? And I was taking anthropology courses. Um, you talked about the Indians' point of view. My historical novel, my first published novel, Land Without Evil, is about first contact between the Jesuits and the Indians in South America, but it's told from the Indians' point of view. That's the stuff that's always drawn me. The indigenous, like you said, the indigenous knowledge, that where it comes from. What do they know? How do they know? How do they know so much about neurochemistry and physiology? And you have all now this, modern day quantum physics, right? Shamans are like, well, you guys been the past 2 millennia. I mean, come on, get real, right? So it's all fascinating, and I think that the need for it is more intense now, more than ever. We're cut off with technology and cell phones and AI and all that stuff that takes us away from just being outside and walking barefoot in the grass and hanging out with the tree. I mean, we're culturally so far removed from that, even Bitcoin and all that.
Yeah, I think. I think this new frontier we're on with technology. I think you'll be getting ahead if you're able to integrate all of it. If you're able to stay grounded in nature, but also understand the advantages of using these powerful tools as well. Just like like anything else, balance, everything in moderation, everything in balance. I don't think we need to say no technology, no this or no.
That's impossible. Yeah.
No, and I know people there. There are people that are like that think that like, oh, this is going to be the end of everything, and who knows what the future will bring. But I will say, I think when you look at this paradigm that we're in, that's shifting, I think it's important, like you said, though, to stay kind of grounded in what got us here and based on our physiology and our biology and all that. So yeah, I think it's these things are powerful tools, and to understand them and the history of them and give them proper reverence, that's definitely the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, one of the reasons I wrote that historical novel is because I saw their culture basically disappearing. So I did tons of research. I researched that book for 2.5 years. And I like to think that I saved the culture, at least in print, so people know that, hey, there was this way of being in the world and looking at the world that's not anymore, because there's always something to learn. History does repeat itself over and over again. But, it's interesting, too. I said a little while ago, one of the keys to ayahuasca is learning to navigate, for lack of better words, extreme psychological states, right? And almost more important, or maybe even more important, is integrating those things back into your normal everyday life, right? So with the way technology is shifting and changing and accelerating right now, it ties in with what you were also just saying, that it's about navigating it, learning to survive in a world with AI. And to me, AI is eating the world. That's a whole nother story. Don't get me going on that.
No, I mean, just here's an example real quick. So since I've been doing Mind Escape now for over 8 years. I used to do it with my cousin Maurice. He got busy. He's got his own business. He has enough time for this, and I respect that. Then I started seeking out, putting feelers out. Does anybody want to help out or be a producer or help me with this or that or whatever? And there's been a few people along the way, but nobody actually offering any. I'm kind of like I have OCD. I'm very particular, very detail oriented and things like that.
You have refined taste. You're not OCD. You have refined taste.
I really do have OCD, though, for real. But yeah, this in terms of taste, yes, I would say refined taste as well. But so ChatGPT, I think, in Gronk's for some things, they offer like assistance from some, they provide. I'm not using them to ask questions. I'm helping. I'm using them to help organize my own thoughts and my own things, so I can keep on track with certain things and not get completely like lost in my own research and my own thoughts and things like that. So I do think that there is something powerful to it. I think if you're just asking it questions all day long, yeah, you're not really using your own brain power. There might be something negative about that. But if you're using it to help, you're integrating it into a creative endeavor, you're integrating it into and not making it do all the work, but just helping, use it as a tool to help you, I think there can be something powerful to that.
It has its uses, but this is my personal perspective as a creator. To me, I've been cultivating my craft all my life, and I've just been going through it with this book. I go through it with every book. You find a problem that you need to solve, and you wrestle with it, and you're miserable with it, and you go to bed and plug it into your brain, and you wake up, and sometimes I could spend 4 days trying to figure out a paragraph. But I'll tell you what, when that subconscious delivers, there ain't nothing like that magic. Oh my God. And then it's like, holy Jesus, that's brilliant. Where did that come from? Right. And you're really dialed in and you're like channeling because the whole idea of the process is learning to work and program your subconscious. So for me, that struggle, and it's a miserable struggle, and it always delivers. And it always delivers in a big way. It's it's like beating your head against the wall, right? It feels so good when you stop, right? When it comes. And sometimes it's just one word or the tweak of one sentence. It solves this whole big problem. And it's so rewarding because all this other stuff comes out behind it. And for me, the AI stuff takes that away. I'd rather suffer. I look at myself as like, instead of all the stuff that the AI and all that, I'm like an old school craftsman with hand tools. I got a hammer and a chisel and I got a sandpaper, and I'm not going to use power tools.
Yeah, you're a wordsmith.
Yeah, I'm a wordsmith. So, and I don't want to hear what you have to say, how you think it should sound. I could give a shit. I want it to sound this way. And you keep telling me you're going to help me. You're a pain in the ass. Get out of my way. You're distracting me. I got work to do. Get out of here, right? So that's my way. But like,
well, yeah, people use AI to write scripts and books and things.
Oh,
like
that's
that.
what I was just gonna say.
That's what I mean. I'm a kind of against that. Like, so to your point, but like I said, like, making lists or organizing thoughts, I think that's different. But what you're talking about, I agree with. If you're having it do creative work for you, I think that you're missing the point. To your point.
Yeah, exactly. But like I was reading one thing they did with the AI. They found out. I'm paraphrasing here, but there was a certain kind of cotton plant disease. No, soybeans. I think it was soybean disease that came, and they plugged all that stuff in there, and they can go to ChatGPT or any one of them and say, "I have my soy plants. They have this, this, and this," and come back out with the exact answer. It's this disease. You need to give it this. No, it solves all the problems because they can program them all in. But to me, though, it's human nature. It's getting abused. You have these now ChatGPT or not, whatever, AI suicides, and all the slop they say, and it gives you wrong answers. Somebody plugged me into it, and it said I was a renowned writing teacher from Schenectady, New York. Well, I'm from Boston, right? So there was so it'll tell you what you want, basically. But I do agree there are uses for it that are practical in terms of organizational type skills, but get it out of the arts. I was going to mention Lorenzo from the Psychedelic Salon. He and I are real tight, obviously, but I helped him start that podcast. He's writing books and he's using the AI to figure out where he's going to go with his plot. I can't do that. The whole process and the struggle and the surprise of what comes out. Nothing beats that. I live for that. That's the whole thing. Stephen King used to call it, he probably still does, calls it falling into the page. You're staring at a blank page, and then the words start to come, and then next thing you know, you look up, and like 4 hours have passed, and you got like 4 good pages, right? And you're in that. Writing's my favorite altered state.
No, I think you're on the money with, your take on it. I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
And I look, like I said, I've tried implementing other people into this podcast and having them help in different ways and stuff like that. And nobody could ever really help in any meaningful way that I needed. But ChatGPT can. So and they're not writing scripts for me. They're not doing anything other than organizing, creating SEO descriptions and things like that. And, things that it can, if you can look up keywords and tag words and that's what I'm talking about, using it as a tool to look up other online things, not create, I'm a musician. We were talking offline. I'm all about analog, like all my guitars and amps and pedals and everything's analog. The music at the intro, that's all analog. That's I'm all about that. But I do think that there can be some integration with it, depending on what it is. So I 100% agree with you. Don't use it if you're a creative person, don't use it to create. Maybe use it when it comes time to publish or whatever, or something along those lines where it's, helping you figure out stuff, or maybe a bibliography or whatever the case, or something like that.
One of my fans turned me on to this book. I don't know if you can see this or not.
Yeah, I can see it.
I'll just hold it up for a second. I'll read from it. It's Ways of Being by a guy, James Bridle. And it says, it's animals, plants, machines, the search for a planetary intelligence. It's brilliant. It gets into the whole AI thing. And then the AI, or just being aware of intelligences of other things, like just because plants don't act like us doesn't mean they're not intelligent. They're just intelligent in different ways. So it gets into all that. And AI as we know it, and then other intelligences, and how we're all sharing the same space, so to speak. It's a really brilliant book. It's a wonderful perspective.
I'll have to check it out. That was a big book too. How many pages is that thing?
Yeah, it's only 300. I don't not counting the appendix and bibliography and all that. It's like 312 pages. But I mean, it's really, really well done.
Yeah, no, I'll have to check that out for sure. And it'll be interesting to see where all this goes. Look, you have to understand this is kind of what I am into and what I do, technology and, things I'm, when I'm not being a podcaster. And you have to understand what AI is capable of and what it is. It's just a large language model, and it's just aggregating information that's already out there. So to come up with some breakthrough thing or whatever, it's just putting pieces together. It's not actually discovering things or actually giving you the full answer. It's giving you the best answer that some other human had already put down on paper.
Yeah, or unique perspective. But it's also what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, it just slipped away. It'll come in just a second. Yeah, it'll come to me. It'll pop in here in a second.
Okay.
But it's the way it. How can I put it? The way it works. It's not so much AI so much as in and of itself, as in how it's used. That's the real problem, because humans are going to mess things up.
Well, as you already mentioned, it will give you wrong answers, and if you're just assuming that everything it gives you is right, then you're already behind.
The AI, the AI suicides and the AI chatbot love affairs. I just read an interesting story earlier today or yesterday, about a guy who was involved with the AI and came up with a mathematical theory. You heard about that one? The AI encouraged. He came up with this mathematical theory, and the AI encouraged him and said he was brilliant, and it was all, man, like the best thing in the world. You're right. You solved this massive mathematical problem, and they found out it was total bullshit. And it
I
was
have heard
basically
like AI psychosis, like like you said,
exactly that's what I'm
like
talking
kind of
about.
reaffirming people's
Yeah,
delusional beliefs or things like
that's
that.
exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So one of the things it's a human nature, but one of the things that we mess up with is we get a technology and we go balls out with it before even knowing what it really is. And for me, you may have heard me say this before, but I started off in the Air Force working on tube equipment. I went from tubes to solid state to integrated circuits to microprocessors to mini computers to PCs to mainframes to PCs to networks. My last big job was an IT manager, right? So I've lived through all that technology and been part of it. The company I used to work for was the ones that handed out all the URLs. We owned Network Solutions at the time. That was the one place where you could get your URLs. And I worked on cutting edge lasers and this and that. So I was part of all that. I made my living in the middle of all that. But I've noticed that we do stuff, we get something and we think this is cool, and then we're off and running before we even know. And I think that AI is a huge, huge double edged sword. And we're going to benefit from it, but we're going to suffer from it. We already are.
I
You don't
mean,
even know
you could say that about the internet right now in general
oh
too,
yeah,
though. Yeah.
even technology overall. If you think about it, um, it's like it gets ahead of us. And one of the interesting things I've noticed is, the expression "state of the art." Well, that's where the evolution of technology is at any one moment. I don't know that it's that way anymore. But for years and years and years in the industry, there was Moore's law. And basically, they would take the amount of space it takes for a number of circuits, and they were having it every year. So what would happen is they'd have, like, for argument's sake, in PCs and all that, you'd have a 286, and you might have that for a year or two or whatever, and then they got this new improved 386 comes out. Well, so suddenly all the 286 prices drop, and then you have 386 SX and then 486, right? And then every time, and then the evolution of the technology is moving at a particular speed. So whatever speed it moves at, it comes out with a new version. Suddenly, all the old versions drop. So it drives it financially, economically. It drives it, and it's just going headlong forward without any real knowledge of where it's going. And we're discovering more every day, right? I mean, even all the AI stuff, a lot of it's been based around like the NVIDIA chips, which were like the ultimate, probably still are the ultimate video processors, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, though, I would say with the invention of quantum computing, in most I don't think most people even realize they think that quantum computing is just faster, but I think that no, it's more based on physics and understanding physics and things like that. So
Yeah.
if you can implement some sort of advanced AI that's not in the stage that it's in now, like a more intelligent and integrated to that, we might be able to open up understanding of physics in our own universe in a way that we never have before. So that would be an application that I would be all on board for. Now that might bring up other problems, and I'm sure
It,
somebody
it,
would try and weaponize some aspect of it, but
oh, sure. It's going to be
yeah,
all of that. It's going to be all of that.
yeah.
And to say quantum computers faster is like comparing speed with infinity. I mean, the whole thing is fucking exponential and sprawling, and just it's like a bottomless, hungry, freaking ravenous monster.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
talking about
yeah,
creating nuclear plants just to
feed
power
it.
these things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just read a thing this morning about how a lot of people's electric bills are going up because it's consuming so much power. And if you think about it in a way, like sort of in terms of a metaphor, right? You have this thing consuming the earth, consuming power, and it's supporting what's contrary to the natural world. It's and that's just like one perspective. It's not all about that, but it's interesting to see that sort of dichotomy arise.
Yeah, I think look, with all this stuff, I think we're entering everything's ex, expanding exponentially, but also we're also still humans. We're still flawed. We're still,
Exactly.
we're not perfect ourselves. So this idea that we're going to make something perfect, it's almost like we're trying to make God or a God or
We're
something.
playing God. We're
Yeah.
playing God. Yeah.
But
But we,
I don't know how, if we're not able to achieve that ourselves, how are we able to build something of that nature? That, I guess that would be the philosophical question I would have, to the people that are pushing that.
yeah. So here's a little story for you. Years ago, I worked with this younger girl, and she was studying to be a therapist. And her whole life was whacked. Everything was wrong. And I sat down with her one day and I said, and I was mean, I'm trying to be mean or nothing. I said, don't you think you should figure out your own life before you're going to try to solve everybody else's? She just broke down and started bawling. I wasn't trying to be mean, but that was my observation, right? And then you realize over
Yeah,
the
how could you help
years,
somebody else if you can't even help yourself?
yeah, you got to start. That's the whole concept of shaman is the wounded healer. They figure out their own stuff and heal themselves, and then they can go heal others by what they've learned about themselves. You know, but a lot of people who get into psychiatry and psychology and therapy are whacked themselves. It's part of their search for trying to figure out what's wrong with them.
Oh,
But
for
this girl was,
sure.
yeah, this girl was pretty blatant, and
Oh,
it was,
trust me, dude. I've been to enough CBT and therapies for my OCD, and I always wondered, like, if I ever came across a therapist that actually had OCD, they could probably help me more than
yeah,
anybody. So that never happened. But oddly enough, the best therapist I ever had was like a converted. He used to be a priest, and then he became like a therapist. And we
yeah,
would talk like I would talk about like altered states and psychedelics and like and he was open to those ideas of
yeah.
helping and things like that. So yeah, I think that yeah, we're just like these like perfectly imperfect beings that I don't know, it's going to be
We're,
interesting
we're,
to
we're not grown up enough for the toys we have.
That's true, that's very true.
A big part of the acceleration, we're talking technological acceleration, one of the biggest things is the internet because it connects us immediately. I can have a physics equation I'm trying to analyze and hit boom, and 2 seconds later, some guy in Russia's reading it going, oh, yeah, I know that subtractor constant, blah, blah, whatever. Here's the answer. And that kind of instantaneous communication. I mean, even I'm writing this book and I'm coming across little things and I want to get a refresher. I just take the term and Google it. Pops the definition. I'm like, oh, all right, there it is. Right. Uh, Back in the day, like when I was researching Land Without Evil, man, I'd go to the UCSD. First, I would log on um, dial up, pre internet. I could dial up the UCSD library, and then I'd download all the stuff I want and print them out. Then I'd go to the library and I'd spend $30 on a copy card. And I'd find all the articles from Schultes and all those guys. And I'd go and I'd walk out with a thick stack of papers, right? And then I'd have to sit home and read through it all and then put it all into the key, put it in. Or I had tons of books. I'd have all the books out. I still got them all out now from my last bit of research. They're all there. When you
Really
find it online,
exhausting that Dewey Decimal System there.
oh yeah, I grew up with that. But if I find it online and I'm working on a document, oh there it is. I do a cut and a paste, pop it into my document, edit it, put it where it fits. It's all done in seconds. What used to take days. Even the whole cut and paste function, they used to literally cut and paste when they edited, right?
Probably looks like a serial killer's note or something.
It's exactly what it looked like. Yeah, exactly what it looked like. They would really cut and paste like that. I would just rewrite it. I'd look at it and rewrite it. I think that's a better process. But, what works is,
We went on this like whole AI tangent, which I loved, by the way. That was fantastic. I do want to kind of get to some of your writing though, and like your process,
yeah,
because
me too.
because I don't, like we always talk about like ayahuasca and psychedelics, and I love all that stuff, the history and your connections with all these, big shots and great minds throughout psychedelic history. But I kind of wanted to ask you your takes, because I know that you're really ingrained in the writing community too, and
Oh, yeah.
you do nonfiction and fiction, and you have all these great stories. Your fiction and nonfiction often, they weave these psychedelic experiences into narrative. How do you balance that poetic creativity with like accurate representation of those states, if you will?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's been my lifetime struggle. I've had, let me think about this. Stan Krippner, who I mentioned, and Lorenzo from the Psychedelic Salon. Big psychedelic guys say they've never seen it. They've never seen anybody describe it as well as I do. And I appreciate that, and I take that as a compliment, because I've struggled all my life to try to get what is beyond words and paint a picture to put it into somebody's mind that defies words, basically. So one of the things I discovered, one of the big keys is metaphor. Basically metaphor, black as coal, um, you know, all those references. So you find something, one metaphor is one thing that represents another, and if you put it the right way into somebody, they can get it. Now, for me, the process of writing, the mind is the canvas, and the words are the brushes, the strokes of the brush. Except you're not painting a static picture, you're painting a dynamic picture. So you want to pick elements that stand out, that somebody can totally relate to, that makes it real for them. And then you choose that. And you do your best to put that representation of what you've experienced or know or you're trying to describe in their mind. But using a lot of metaphor and colors. And, they used to make jokes about H.P. Lovecraft. Oh, it was the ultimate horror. It was so horrible. I'm paraphrasing, but it was so horrible I can't write it. Basically like that. So when you understand the elements that are important, one of the things about ayahuasca experience and psychedelics in general, but especially with ayahuasca, is you can have emotional, auditory, visual things all kind of fused into one. One of the keys to dream retrieval, for argument's sake, and dream interpretation, is to follow the feeling that the dream gave you. Follow that and try to figure out where that came from, and you'll discover more than trying to just do logically make sense out of it. So you pick out things also that have what we call significant details that put you there, that put the reader there. Whenever somebody reads, they're really becoming the narrator, especially in fiction. We all want to be the hero. When we watch the heroes, everybody wants to be Spider-Man or whoever their favorite is, Superman, Batman. And even in the thriller novels and spy novels, you're living vicariously through the characters. You're seeing things through the character's eyes. You really, if you're doing a good job, you identify and you sort of become the character in your mind. You're having that fantasy of being a super spy or whatever. So when you put yourself in that place of perspective, and then you pick significant details that put the reader there with you. It's a cliche, but you could say cold as ice. It's a cliche, but nonetheless, everybody knows what it's like to be cold as ice, right? Uh, you can get creative and say, the sight of the corpse felt like a rattlesnake slithering down his spine, and icy drops of cold sweat ran in his butt crack, and whatever. When you bring in visceral things, that makes it real, because that's something everybody can relate to, right? It was so disgusting, I started gagging in the smell, and the next thing you know, I was fucking blowing lunch, right? I mean, um, those are things everybody can relate to.
Yeah,
So
for
when
sure. Especially the butt crack part.
yeah, well, I was getting carried away, but
No, that was great.
people have told me over the years that I really have a knack, and I worked on it for years to develop it, of putting people there.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done ayahuasca, but you definitely have got the psychedelic feeling and some visuals, and obviously you don't just write about ayahuasca, but you definitely have that down. I would say, just like I've seen a couple people recreate videos online that kind of resemble the visuals of the experience. I think that you've got that from like a writing perspective, which is a great thing to have. It's just look, one thing when I was getting into reading these kinds of books, like in high school, freshman year, my cousin Maurice, who used to be my co-host, we read Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, On the Road, Dharma Bums. What else did we read? Like a Jerry Garcia biography. Like we were reading all sorts of stuff, counterculture stuff, Hunter S. Thompson. And one of the things that struck me the most was those great writers had the ability to use descriptive detail in a way that, like you said, kind of puts you there. And I think that you do that very well, as you mentioned. And I think that that's an important thing to have, especially when you're discussing these kinds of experiences.
Yeah, it's authenticity. It's why I decided to write a memoir. How many people got to do what I've done, and the crazy path I took to end up in the jungle and to have such profound experiences, and to be able to make sense out of them. You know, uh, Sometimes I feel like myself and others are like, I'm a scout, and I'm no turn unstoned. I've hit every brain cell I could find with anything I could find, and been through some really crazy things that I've learned to make sense of and navigate. So now it's important for me to take that. When people, I hear it all the time. If I lead a group and I take them on a journey, they feel very, 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 very safe with me. And I always tell them, I'll go absolutely anywhere in the dark with you, no problem. I'm here. And it makes a big difference for them because they feel safe and protected. And for me, it's part of embracing being freaking psychedelic elder or old guy, because all my mentors are gone just about anyway. Well, it's my turn to carry the torch. And I think it's important to pass on everything I've learned, and maybe some of the nutty stuff I've gone through, people can read about and go, okay, I don't need to do that, like that. But it's my time and place to do this. So,
to that
I'm
point,
really,
do you see your writing itself as like a psychedelic process, that maybe you're channeling something larger than yourself for other people or the general public?
yeah, oh, absolutely. That's when I talk about falling into the page and when it's flowing. Years ago, I used to write my stuff, and I'd wait a few weeks, then I'd go read it in a writing workshop. And I remember years ago, one of the first times I was reading my stuff, I hadn't looked at it for a couple of months, and I was like, shit, this is really good. Who wrote this? Right? Like, this is brilliant. I'm not that good. Right? And now my best stuff, I trust in the process. And it comes through. It's the same thing when I play drums. I'm known for playing the floor also. I also play handpan. You know what a handpan is, right? I play handpan. And when I'm doing that in an ayahuasca ceremony, and it starts to come, I just close my eyes and it just takes me, and I just go, and it takes me places. I'm like, wow. And of course, everybody who's with me, who's listening, they're on the journey with me. And I take them all these different places, rhythmically and tonally. I mean, you're a musician, right? But when you're doing the ceremony and they're really receptive and open to it, and you're doing it with the intention of guiding them along, you may have heard me say this before, but in the lore of the jungle, they say that ayahuasca is the river, and the notes and the icaros, the songs and the notes, the music, are the boats that carry you along the river. So when I hit that and I have that feeling, I just let go, man, and it's a beautiful thing. And when I get to that point, like I said, Stephen King called it falling into the page, where I'm staring at a page, and next thing you know, 3 hours have gone by, and I got 4 good pages, and like, wow. And then the other thing is when you go through successive edits, it's like a different part of you is looking at it each time. So like I'll finish the first draft of this thing, I'll set it aside for a month and forget about it. Then I'll print it out. Then I'll go through it with a red pen and I'll line edit it. Now, having it in print with a red pen, I see it in a totally different way. It's like another person's looking at it than the one who first wrote it, right? And then when I take those red lines and then I integrate them into Word as I'm going back and forth, that's another edit. So each successive time, a different part of me contributes something. Sometimes I could be 3 or 4 drafts in and something really good will come. I'll go, fuck, I got to get that in there, man, right? Here, let's cut that over here and move that down. We'll get rid of that sentence, put that in there. It's like working with wood, sanding it over, polishing it, getting looking for typos, all that stuff. But it really is a magical process, and it's beyond me. To me, good art, and that includes music and writing, transcends that. You really sort of surrender yourself to it. I put shit into my subconscious. I have no idea what it's going to do. I put it in and I forget about it because I know it's going to come back out in some cool way. And it's a very wonderful, mysterious process that I've cultivated now for 40 years or so. And it's freaking magic. And the stuff that comes out, I mean, God, this is brilliant. Who the fuck wrote this? It wasn't me. I ain't that good. And there it comes. And then when you hear other people say it, I've got something, I lost track. I got something like 42 writing awards, all kinds of stuff. For me, I like it because it's validation, because you don't know. You could think a lot of what you do is shit. But then I get a sense that when it comes out, it's going to happen. And one of the reasons, among a million others, when I started writing is I was reading a lot of shit. And I'm like, if they're publishing this shit, I could do better than that at least, right? And then, of course, I got really swallowed up in the craft. And I was lucky and blessed to run into, Ray Bradbury and be mentored by him and other big people who really saw me as one of them and took me under their wing. And, I never intended on being a writing teacher. I got hundreds of students. Some of my top students are now teaching with me at the Writers' Conference. They're getting to be big name writing teachers themselves. So I get the proud daddy syndrome,
Yeah, that's awesome. In your teaching, though, you emphasize discipline. How does discipline, though, coexist with the chaos or the craziness of these visionary experiences, which are pretty much not discipline at all?
Well, I keep them separate, for one thing. Like, I've known writers who do down in the jungle doing a dieta, and like I'm working on my book, and I'm like, you're fucking nuts. That's exactly what you're not supposed to be doing. I had one guy, I won't mention his name, he was begging me to read his manuscript. I almost took a swing at him. I was like, get out of here. That's the last thing I want. I'm not here to write. I'm here to not write.
Tell me off air. I'm interested.
Yeah. All right. Remind me. Anyway.
We'll add it to the Patreon. No, I'm joking.
Now, one of the things Ray Bradbury said, which is great, among other gazillion brilliant things, is if you show up in the same place at the same time every day to write, your body will adapt to the rhythm. our bodies, we're made of rhythms. We breathe in, we breathe out, our heart beats, our pulse goes, our brain waves. We're all about rhythm. Rhythm is life. You know that as a musician. That's why music is so popular, because it's rhythm. One of the most best things I've ever heard, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and the heartbeat. Boom, boom. Damn, I mean, that just like takes me over.
That
right?
intro is just transcendent. I remember being a freshman, blazing up, going to lay down, throw my big headphones on, and just lose myself in Dark Side of the Moon. That was like that was like my first before I really got into like psychedelia.
I won't even. I'll tell you one thing really quick and getting back on track, but I've taken hundreds and hundreds of people on their first acid trips. And one of the things I always do as part of the initiation is I have them sit through Dark Side of the Moon. It's like the thing.
I think that's the way to go, because I'll tell you one thing. I've experienced that on The Wall, and those two do not go together at all.
No, Dark Side of the Moon is it for me as far as I'm concerned.
The war aspects of The Wall mixed with LSD are not two things that...
No, it's the energy of it.
It's so dark. It's so... Yeah.
So the key is the rhythm. So now I got a great rhythm. I'm hitting the gym 5 days a week, and then I write. So I'm very physically active, and then I write. And I'm showing up the same time every day, and it flows, and it picks up, and your body knows. Even like I'm one of those, Hemingway was like a coffee shop bar room writer. I can be like that. I love going to funky old coffee shops where you smell coffee and cute little chickies are running around, and I'm working on my stuff. And it's just enough I get stuck, and I can look over and look at some little cute chick and kind of momentary distraction, and the whole vibe and coffee, and then, that's it. And then I go back and, work on it again, right? It's that thing. It's the rhythm. So with the gym and the writing, it's like a pendulum. Even back in the day when I was working out, I remember I was reading books, and I would read a book, and I would do, 10 reps, read 2 chapters, 10 reps, read 2, right? And I'd finish books and get good workouts, and because I was playing the energies off of each other. So I use that kind of an energy to go. And I hate to say it, but cannabis really helps me. But typically, I have my coffee in the morning, and I'll make myself wait till 4:20. But then, the caffeine, you get a little brittle, and it's just not doing it and all that. I take a couple hits of some good weed, man. I'll get another 3 or 4 pages, good ones. It's like a second stage, like, oh yeah, okay.
You don't have to twist my arm about it, bro. I'm
always
there. If you're an artist, there's very few things that I do think are super helpful, and that can be one of them.
No, I was telling my brother, my happy place is a caffeine, coffee, a little bit of weed, and I'm writing. I'm in heaven. I'm serving my purpose. I'm being, and stuff's coming out. And like I said, it comes out, and I look at it and I go, wow. And then when I've had some of it, I've entered in some contests and I win first prize or honorable mention or first place. I go, yeah, I guess you can write. You're not blowing sunshine up your ass. You're not worthless. These people who don't give a shit who you are, they're just looking at, does your work affect them, or, is it powerful? And to get that, my second year at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, I won a fiction award about a guy who got some psychedelics from a shaman and didn't do what he was told, and ends up losing his mind and killing his girlfriend and getting taken away in a straitjacket. But it was a psychedelic short story. It was like my first one. And I was at this writers conference with all these older people and this and that, and they freaking gave me a fiction award for it. So I thought, wow, I can write, And now I know not just a lot of people, even bigger name people who have a lot of respect. Stan Kripner, like I said, is a big fan of mine. My buddy Mick was from Mick. He won't mind me saying it. Mick Mashbeer. He was Alice Cooper's lead guitar for a $1 Billion Babies album tour. He's a really good friend of mine. He loves my work. I send him all the audiobooks for free now. But we get together at least once a year when I'm up there. He's in Santa Barbara. But I've had people who I highly respect. Jim Fadiman's another one. I told you Jim Fadiman came to my writing workshop, right?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it a couple
He
episodes
was my
ago.
writing student. I didn't even know who he was. And he was like my teacher's pet because he was good. He was writing these cool little short stories.
Yeah, he's written some, I think his last couple books have been nonfiction on microdosing.
Yeah, that's why I want to get him on this ayahuasca one because, but I got to know him because his uncle Clifton was a big deal in the literary world, and that's how he was involved with the conference. And when the conference was over after spending a week with me, and I didn't know who he was, and Jim comes up to me and hands me his book. It's called The Other Side of Hate, Haight. It's a great novel about the summer of love and whatchamacallit, the government program.
Yeah, MK Ultra.
Thank you, MK Ultra. Yeah. That was really done. I looked at it, and I looked at him, and I said, "You're one of us, aren't you?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And then I found out who he really was, and I was freaked out. And then when he came out with his microdosing book, I interviewed him on the Psychedelic Salon for the book. And then I did the Santa Barbara Writers Conference scrapbook about the first 30 years of the conference. Big book. We did a documentary film, and I sent Jim some clips, stuff I found about his uncle. So he really appreciated that. So we're good friends like that. So I think he might.
He's still got an open invitation. I reached out in the past. There was no
Yeah,
response.
no,
And
you're out of them.
that happens too. And, like I'm always open to have these conversations if, ends up coming around. That's happened a couple times where I try to get a hold of somebody. It didn't work out. And then later on down the line, you connect. And I mentioned off air that I became familiar with, obviously the microdosing stuff now, but an electric Kool-Aid acid test, there's a part where Jim and his wife bail Kesey and the Merry Pranksters out of jail, if I recall.
I'll have to reread that.
Yeah, the beginning part.
Because when I first read it, I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I read it way back.
Yeah, that book
Anyway.
is, you're talking about descriptive detail. Tom Wolfe, what a...
Oh, he was a brilliant writer. He put you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a great documentary about him a while back.
Yeah,
Talking
there's very few, and it wasn't obviously just the psychedelic stuff either. He kind of crossed different genre. But yeah, that's what you've got, man. You've got that descriptive detail. I've read, a handful of your books, and the one I always think about too, because I do think about, metaphysics and death a lot, is it Death, a Love Story? Is that the name of it? Yeah.
That's gotten some really interesting responses. I knew it would.
Yeah.
A lot of people mistake the cover.
With the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. And, I wanted it to be like Death is giving you a cheesy Hallmark card, because the voice in it was sort of, for lack of better words, kind of light and I won't say quite snarky, but, hey, wait till you see this, kind of like that. And that was a fun experiment in voice. You have a particular voice when you're writing particular stories. It's essentially the tone and the voice of the narrator or the storyteller or the main character. So that voice was different than, say, the voice when I did my Land Without Evil about historical, right? And with death, I was really that really got caught up in that whole idea of the voice of death. If death is just talking to you in a one-on-one conversation, what's he going to say and what's it going to be like? And then you can go off and throw a little humor in there. And I had a lot of fun. And I got some really amazing reviews on it. So that was fun. And how do you classify that book, fiction or nonfiction?
The other thing too is we all die. We all think about it, but we all pretend. We all, pacify ourselves. Yeah, it's always, it's always this like obscure thing in the back of our mind until we think
Yeah.
about it, and then it's like, oh, let me push it back there because I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
No, but I thought that was a great book. I think anybody
Oh, thank
interested
you.
should check that out. I was going to ask you, in Spirit Matters, you described the spiritual dimension of reality. How has your understanding of metaphysics kind of shifted or changed through the years since you've written that, or has it?
That's a great question, bro. Here's the thing. You get impressed by certain things at a particular point in life where you're at a certain stage where you have so much knowledge. Oftentimes you come back with it some years later and you see all this other stuff you never saw before. And it can be really eye-opening and mind-blowing. Like one of the things I realized, so my first published book was The Small Dark Room of the Soul and Other Stories. And I realized a couple of years after I published it that it was about the human shadow. And I didn't even know what the shadow was at the point, but that's exactly what it was about. And, I was talking about Ann and Sasha Shulgin. I was with them at the Anthropology seminars in Palenque. This is right around, 99, 2000. And Ann encouraged me to do more work, research more into the shadow and incorporate it into my writing. And she made a big difference to me. And I look back on a lot of my work and I was already doing it, but I didn't know what it was and I didn't define it, if that makes any sense. So I look back at some of my earlier works and I'm going, damn, you were like right on and you didn't even know it, like that. So that's always really brilliant. And sometimes I see things, some books I'll read 2 or 3 times and see it in a whole nother way because I've got more time and experience under my belt. One of the great books I reread, which was challenging, but I loved it. I just finished rereading it for the research for this one. It's called The Antipodes of the Mind by Benny Shannon. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not. I'll have to check it out.
He's a cognitive psychologist, and he writes about ayahuasca and his experiences with it from the perspective of being a cognitive psychologist, as opposed to totally like spiritual or an anthropologist or any of that, from a cognitive psychologist. So he really struggles to keep the scientific method in place on something that defies it. And I thought it was a really wonderful, both times I read it, perspective. Because you want to look at stuff like, especially ayahuasca. I mean, ayahuasca is full of mystery no matter what. That's one of the conclusions he came to at the end of, and that's a big book. That's pretty thick. But the idea of somebody with that different perspective looking at it that way, like for me, the definition of insight is to look at something from this way and that way and that way. Look at it. What does the anthropologist say? What does the cognitive psychologist say? What does the psychiatrist say? What does the archaeologist say? Right? And you look at all of those, and then it's like looking into a room from like different windows and maybe through the ceiling. That to me is how you really gain insight into something. So for me, I'd read all this stuff about ayahuasca before I ever did it. And then I did tons of ayahuasca. And then I went back and reread what I read the first time. I'm like, yeah, right on. And oh, that's what he means. Oh, yeah, I get that. Like that. So it's a constant process of growing. And being a writer, and for me, I guess I could say writer/lecturer. And the fact that I've done, I'm doing a great podcast with people like you and, coast to coast, all those things where I do so well. I'm a communicator. And writing is the art of communicating. And I spent my life refining the art of communicating with the written word and otherwise. And I'm always messing around with words in my head, turning them around backwards and saying them backwards. And, you got your words all mixed up. Chuck you Farley, whatever. I'm always going through my head, and every once in a while, a funny pun will come up. You know, one of the things I've been saying lately, I don't know if it's original, but people will say to me, "Oh, you're a good writer, and you're a great teacher, and you're a very good, you're a great writer," and blah blah. And that's it. And I'll always say, "I'm a legend in my own mind." That's as far as I go. The rest of it, thank you, nice to hear, but I'm not. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I feel it's important to communicate knowledge. And I think ultimately, if you continue in with this work, you start just gaining more, for lack of better words, more of a cosmological perspective, bigger picture. And you
Yeah,
see
yeah.
things.
I don't think when people say like dissolving your ego, I think we've talked about this in the past too. Like, you need your ego. It's all just about what you
Yeah,
feed your ego. Without your ego, how could you become the best at anything? Because there's a certain level of competitiveness or like drive to become, known, or drive to get something that you feel is super important out there, or something along those lines. So when people are like, "Oh man, I totally dissolved my ego," and then a year later they're the biggest asshole you ever met again. So I think it's just about what you feed your ego. Like I have an ego, you have an ego, like everybody's got an ego. Even if you dissolve it for the duration of an experience, it's going to come back. So it's more about how you cultivate it than how you're bolstering yourself up or whatever. But
yeah,
I wanted to ask you, so usually consciousness studies, they split materialism and idealism.
yeah.
What have you found through your own experiences? Like, where do you stand on that debate personally, based on everything you've experienced?
Two things, very quick. I don't consider it ego. I always like to say I'm a cast of thousands. I'm a multi-headed, infinite hydra of some not so psycho subpersonalities. And one of my coaches told me years ago, you don't kill your egos, you give them a new job. So I like that. Anyway, I had to get that out. And then you were just asking about,
Yeah, like consciousness, materialism
oh yeah, yeah,
versus
yeah, yeah. So I
idealism.
really, yeah, I got into that a lot in my other book, uh, one of the longest book titles ever. The center of the universe is right between your eyes, but home is where the heart is. Because here's the thing, you can't really change the outside world. I can't change what's going on in freaking politics. I can't really change what's going on in Ukraine or Gaza and all that insanity. I can't change any of that. But I'm in charge of my conscious awareness, and I can choose where I want to invest my energy or not. So therefore, I get the choice to create my reality within my mind because we all have all these different perceptions and thoughts and feelings and emotions and energies and microwaves and pollution, all is coming at us. But we get to choose what we make of it. So I could see a guy walking down the street and thinking he's going to shoot me or stab me and be paranoid and have high blood pressure and maybe have a heart attack because I'm all freaking out over something that has no reality except some fear that I have that might be based on a past experience. Or I can cruise on and say, hi, how you doing? Or I can say, I don't even care about you, don't even exist. I'm more focused on that. We get to choose where our conscious awareness of, and that's the whole concept of mindfulness and being in the moment. So when the little monkey mind psycho monkey lunatics all pop up in my head, which they're there all the time having a blast.
That old homunculi.
Yeah. And I'm looking at them, and if there's something really stupid, I'll go, I do it in a loving way, but I'll go, look, you shut the fuck up and go to your room. Daddy's home. I'm not listening to your shit. So just go to your room. I hear you. Okay, now shut up and go to your room. And I do it in a loving way, but I'm paying attention. And you can watch people, if you observe people really closely, and you can watch sometimes the expressions that go across their face, sometimes a bunch of times, even in a minute. to me, it's like you can see the little sub-personalities popping up. And they work together, and they're very insidious, and they all do their little thing, and they all have agendas. But you got to acknowledge them. Sometimes even let them out to play, but keep an eye. It's like having kids, right? You got a kid, right? You watch your kid, you may let them run to the edge of something or this and that, but you're watching. And you'll let them go out as far as it's safe. And then if you think there's a boundary that's not good, you're going to intervene and make sure they're safe. But you want to give them a little bit of a leeway to run around and start exploring those things.
Yeah,
So it's the
I'm
same.
way less way less laid back than my wife, which is
Yeah,
I'm just an overly cautious person in general. So
yeah,
I kind of look to her because she's more of the rational,
yeah,
in that regard. But
yeah. But it's what you do. When kids are really acting up and they're being a problem, they're looking for where the boundaries are. And sometimes you got to step in and be the bad guy and say, no, you don't do this or that because you're going to hurt yourself or whatever. And a lot of people don't like to do that. But that's why the kids are acting up. They want to know where the boundaries are so they know where the safety is. And
yeah,
once
I
you
mean,
establish.
how do you learn? I mean, that's how they're getting. That's how
Exactly.
they got to get that firsthand knowledge. It's like
Yeah,
the old thing. I could tell you don't touch the stove, but
exactly.
most people are going to still touch that stove, and they're going to have to
Yeah.
find out from firsthand
Oh,
experience. That's the
daddy's
best.
right.
It's the best way to
Daddy's
learn.
right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, that's the way to look at it. You ever hear of IFS? Well, it's called internal family systems, and somebody turned me on to it a while back. And when I read it, I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing all along. And it basically says that we all have like I say, a cast of thousands. We all have a bunch of disparate subpersonalities inside of us with different agendas, some unified, some conflicting. And the idea is, I like to say, the idea is to get the whole band to start singing the same tune together. And then you're not worried about what happened in the past or what might happen in the future or all that. You're present and you're fully present in the moment here and now. So you're more focused on what's happening and so you're more aware. That is really the definition of mindfulness. That's what meditation's all about, is to try to cultivate that so you're paying attention. Because it's all about paying attention. And what is paying attention? Paying attention is awareness, right? The more
Yeah,
you're paying attention, the more aware you are. And isn't that the path to higher consciousness, so to speak, right? Higher
yeah.
awareness.
I think some people. I mean, look, there's different types of meditation.
Yeah, sure.
There's. I think a lot of people think that you're just supposed to completely clear your mind, and I know that's kind of what a lot of spiritual teachers teach too. Like this loss of self or nothingness or something along the. Even though I think that's still impossible to achieve, because even if you think of nothing, you're still thinking of something. So.
There you go.
But it depends. I know people like for me, I used to meditate and try and just block everything out and just experience whatever these light forms and different things and all this weirdness. And then there's also a meditation I like to do. Maybe, you take a couple hits and you're in, close your eyes and, it's more of like not a fact finding mission, inspiration finding mission where you go on a little journey in your own mind and find some
Yeah.
sort of inspiration for your creative process or something that'll
Yeah.
help you. Or so, yeah, I think that there's different aspects to that.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you too, how do you how do you reconcile mystical insight with rational thought or philosophy, and can they coexist, or are they just like fundamentally different languages?
There are different languages that are trying to figure each other out. So you heard me say this before, but I think you might find this interesting in context of this discussion here. When you go to sleep at night, at some point, not everybody has dream memory and all that, but at some point, your logical brain takes a rest, and your other side comes out, your creative, emotional, intuitional side, as opposed to the logical side, the feminine side. And it speaks in a language that's almost alien. When you have a dream, that brain's talking. The other one's kind of taking a rest, right? When you wake up, the left logical side that's been trying to figure things out tries to make sense of the dream. That's why dreams are so weird and dreams recall. It's weird emotional symbolism and conceptual, creative. It's not linear, logical, word after word. It's overwhelmingly, and it has emotion tied in with it, and it's alien. Now, when you drink ayahuasca, your right brain wakes up, but your left brain doesn't go to sleep like in dreaming. So then you get the right brain going off with its emotional, physical, visual, conceptual, musical, rhythmic, all that non-rational stuff is going like crazy. And it overwhelms the left side. It's too much. It's too much parallel processing, too much intuition. It's overload. And the left, more often than not, can't make heads or tails out of it. When you pass through that experience and you come back to quote-unquote baseline consciousness, that is exactly what integration is the left brain trying to figure out everything that happened with the right brain, which overwhelmed it, because it's a lot more powerful in that way with the emotions involved and all that. And it ties in with something you kind of referred to a little while ago. You're trying to make sense of that experience that defies logic, and yet is very powerful and very profound. So in many respects, and I tell this to people all the time, in many respects, it's the time outside of the ceremonies that are more important than the ceremonies themselves. Because you can have all these insights and all this stuff that happen and epiphanies and stuff. But when you go in your everyday, quote unquote, waking consciousness, baseline life, and you're challenged by all these things that you consider to maybe even be absolute truths under a visionary state, and then you're confronted in real life with it, that's where the work is done. Then what are you going to do? You're going to fall down the rabbit hole like you used to? You're going to go, oh, shit. Now, I've seen that from this side that I never saw it that way before. And look what's happening. There it is popping its head. And I always love to say, right about the time you got something figured out is right when you're going to get your ass handed to you. Without fail.
Totally. So I do think that what you're saying is 100% true. And actually, to that point, I actually started writing down these epiphanies and profound things in these experiences, because when you come out of them, it's almost like a dream. Like you were like, oh, how was I? Because you're in a different state of mind now, and you're not. Your mind isn't able to make the connections or contextualize what you were experiencing in that state.
That's right. Did you ever read any Carlos Castaneda?
I have not. Somebody kind of turned me off. They said, "Oh, he's full of shit and everything's a lie," and so I never read. I don't know anything about it. That's just what a couple people.
I read a bunch of them, and they were the thing, especially when I was like 18.
So, what do you think? Do you think there's legitimacy to it, or do you think it was?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
My anthropology professor went to UCLA with him.
Okay.
And he told me that the shaman Don Juan was actually an amalgam of a bunch of different people that he had met and worked with. And some of it was made up, but it was a perspective and a philosophy. So I got into an argument with a guy on the radio about this one time. I shut him up years ago, because it doesn't matter if even the stories are a lie. It doesn't mean they can't contain truth.
Oh, absolutely. I guess somebody maybe kind of portrayed him as more of like a trickster, like maybe trying to pawn off things.
He was,
to
some degree he was.
Yeah.
To some degree, he was. There were some things
But
he
to your
did.
point though, maybe there's nuggets in there. Obviously, I'll definitely check it out. I haven't heard that name in a little bit, so I'll have
Oh, it
to
was
go back.
fun. I read all the books like 3 times. I read all
Yeah.
the books critical of him. Sure, there's holes in it, but I always like to say, and you may have heard me say this before, in this day and age, journalism, which is supposed to be about truth, is more often than not a lie. Fiction, by its very definition, being a lie, is more often than not about truth. I mean, where do we get our best news from? The fucking comedians, right? I mean, so you got to listen to all of it, even like mythologies, whether Jesus lived or not, or did these things or not. Listen to the story. See what it's got to tell you.
Yeah,
It
you
could
could
be a
make that
total,
argument. Like, actually, that's a good analogy because you can make the argument like it doesn't matter if Jesus rose from the dead. If he was this great person that did these great things, he's
yeah,
still an amazing example of a human being. In a time when people were terrible people. Let's
yeah.
be real.
It's
Yeah.
story of the prodigal son and all that, right? And uh, listen to what's being said. Don't shoot the messenger or crucify him or whatever, right? Like that, right? But it's interesting when you think about it and touching back on myths and stuff like that, and even in writing. And I was talking about um, significant details and putting people there and all that. The more you type, the more you lead toward archetypes, the more you are heading toward universal truths. And the more you tap on the archetypes of universal truths, the more people are going to relate, because we can all relate to archetypes because they're bigger concepts. I'm sure you know this, and you probably heard me say this before, but you look at Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars, they all follow the hero's journey.
All
Joseph
phenomenal
Campbell's.
pieces of work.
They're because they hit the archetypes, and that's why they're so universally loved and known and accepted and embraced, because
Yeah,
they hit,
Joseph Campbell, a little formulation there.
yeah, universal archetypes. The more you can hit those things, the more people can relate, because that's what you want to do when you want to communicate, is you want to reach your target audience and write it, what you have to share in a way that makes it accessible to them so they can make sense out of it, hopefully, or just to get them to even think differently or see things in a way they may not have looked at before, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, let's do this new segment. I don't know if you're ready for it, but and then
Born ready.
after we'll hit a couple more things and then we'll wrap it up. But
Sounds like a plan.
Matthew Pallamary, are you ready for Mike's Mind Melters?
Melt me, baby.
All right, Matthew. I'm going to ask you 5 philosophical questions. Just answer them the best you can. Now, I've been changing out the 5th question to just get this formula correct, and I think I said this last time, but I really think that this is going to be the final formulation, because the goal is to ask the same 5 questions to everybody, but the 5th question's been kind of evolving a little bit. So,
Okay.
but here we go. Number 1. What is something you believe in that you know is probably wrong or illogical, but you are just not being honest with yourself?
The government. I'm pretty brutal with myself, actually. And I'm always open to finding out if something doesn't fit my paradigm, then I'll let it go and create something new. When you create something like we probably talked at some point about cymatics, where you send a particular wavelength, frequency, and amplitude, and you get a pattern. And if you increase it, the pattern will dissolve into chaos, and then it'll reform again in a more complex pattern. And if you continue doing it, it'll go through permutations of that, each one being more complex and sophisticated than the other. That's my model for the evolution of consciousness. So I have all my beliefs, so to speak, and I hold on to them. But if I find something that's challenging, I'll explore it. And if it happens to shatter it, I'm willing to let it all go and see what reforms back with the new knowledge integrated somehow. It's kind of a roundabout answer, but
No, that's great. You just have an ever evolving philosophy, which I think most people should have. But I mean, we all have cognitive biases and blind spots. So that's why I asked the question. Some people aren't honest with themselves. And I think that, I think that can be uncomfortable for some people. But that was
I've probably
a
got a few things where I'm like, I think I'm great and I'm really a dick, but I'm working at trying to track them down.
All right. Number 2. Do you think there is an objective purpose for humanity? And if so, what?
Yeah, I think this will probably sound weird. It might get me in trouble, but I think the objective purpose of humanity is to discover that we're God. I think I freaked out one of my grandnephews. He said to me, this is a few years ago, he said to me, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "I am God." And he was freaking out. He was going to a church.
So do you mean just to parse that out, do you mean like we're all pieces of one greater being, like experiencing itself or something along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, what else? If we weren't here to self-reflect, I get atheist friends. I always like to bust their chops when I can. Because I tell somebody, if you tell me you're an atheist, you're telling me you're God. Because you made the ultimate decision whether God exists or not. If you say God doesn't exist, then you've just blotted God out of existence. That makes you God. And if you cease to exist, then there's nothing. If you truly cease to exist, then there's nothing. So that makes you the God. I like to think that we're all gods of our own universes. And I think that everybody in our lives is a reflection of some aspect of ourselves. And those people in our lives who totally drive us bugfuck, those are our shadows. And we have other aspects that we really relate to. Like you and I got a great mind meld. We see eye to eye on most things because there's parts of me that reflect parts of you and parts of you that reflect me. People say to me, "Are you a writer?" And you talk about OCD, right? I say, "No, I'm an obsessive fool," right? And being a writer, wanting to get things right and getting the words as best you can get them and polished and punctuated and all that, there's that aspect to it. So I see everybody as a reflection of who we are. And when I see somebody and they rub me the wrong way, it makes me take a harder look at myself. And there's always tons of resistance, but more often than not, I find something that's been hidden in there. So, and then I'll tell other people, religious people or spiritual people, I say, "Do you believe it's God? God is everywhere?" Yeah. Well, then you're inside of God. You're part of God, and you're looking out, and you get to make the choice of what's real or what you want to believe or how you want to act by what comes into you. Like I was saying earlier with cognition and perception. So the last little piece I'll say, and I put this in my book, and I did a podcast with a guy one time, talking about shamanism and wannabes and guruitis and all that. And I ended it and I said, everybody's a shaman, only most of us don't know it. So it has to do with that reflection. I'll stop there.
Okay. That's a good
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Number 3. Do you think humans are special or separate from the rest of nature? If your answer is yes, please give me your best example or explanation of why.
We are nature. And if people say that they don't believe that they're God, then suddenly they're separating themselves from God. But if God is everywhere, how can you separate from something that you're within? Under the same token and perspective, ecologically speaking, we're the nexus of life on this planet. I don't know that we're the smartest. I don't know that we're necessarily at the top, because like plants were here before us. Just because they don't speak or communicate and perceive in the ways that we do doesn't make them any better or worse. Maybe better, maybe smarter. But we're inextricably part of the environment. You know, one of the great things about the jungle is you watch the cycle of life. So you'll have the bugs, something eats the bugs, maybe a frog eats the bugs, maybe a bird eats the frog, maybe a jaguar eats the bird, maybe the jaguar dies and then the bugs eat the jaguar, and then the frogs eat the bugs and the birds eat the frog. You know, and we're part of it. We're an integral part of it. And it's a huge symphony. Every part of it, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the interaction of life, the symbiosis. You know, plants, you know, how hummingbirds pollinate flowers and how their beaks are developed to go into the flowers, and they pollinate particular species. We're all part of it. And what one of our biggest problems is we think that we're separate from it. We think we're separate from God. We think we're separate from the environment, but we're not. And one of the for lack of better words, you know, without beating a dead horse, but one of the downsides of technology is that sense of separation from life. And I mean life overall. You know, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, the seasons go through, the seed goes in the ground, you know, it sprouts, it blossoms, it grows, it reproduces. We come along, we eat the fruit. You know, it's all intertwined. We're part and parcel of it. I have my other book there, Holographic Cosmic Man. If you look at Mother Earth as an entity, and Gurdjieff and other ones have said that there's a temple of anthropocosmic man in Egypt, and it's a map. They say it's a map of the human body and the cosmos.
Yes, the Temple of Man.
Yes. So that's why I consider it to be, if we're all universes ourselves, then we're a holographic representation of the universe. So we could be a holographic representation of the Earth, which is a holographic representation of the cosmos. It's all, that's why it's a holographic cosmic man, and then the golden mean. Because the golden mean is the perfect mathematical representation of a hologram. And we're all intertwined with each other. If you take a hologram and break it down into individual pieces, you'll see the whole in each piece. So that's my perspective on reality based on my experiences. Like I always like to say, this is my perspective and this is my universe, which makes it the truth for me. Doesn't have to be for anybody else.
No, that's good. And actually, I mean, the way you explained it in nature and we're all part of God, it sounds like you have a very Spinozan, from a philosophical standpoint of God, which is Spinoza pretty much, you know, nature is God. And actually that was kind of what Albert Einstein adopted as, you know, his spiritual side of things, if you will.
Yeah.
But question number 4.
I love when you say that.
What do you think happens when we die?
You know, have you ever heard of the Hathors? Tom Kenyon? I love their stuff. And they said, there's a few things. They said that when you die, you don't necessarily have to go to the light or all that stuff. You don't necessarily have to make any decisions. If you just wait there and stay in that state of pure awareness, then they say unlimited possibilities will open up to you. I think based on our experience in this plane of existence, that if you've explored your consciousness as much as possible, that you'll have a lot more flexibility. They also said that if you're a follower of a guru, for argument, I'll just use Jesus as an example, not making one. It could be anybody, it could be Buddha, it could be Krishna, whatever. But if you follow a guru, they said that when you pass, your guru is sort of obligated to be there for you. and take you into their realm. That's great, except that you're in their realm. So you have to follow their rules in their realm. So I like to keep my mind open to unlimited possibilities of what can happen. Now, here's a little side story. I got my friend Jacques, who just died a couple, 2, 3 months ago, Palokalele. I don't know if I ever talked about him or not. His music opens up the psychedelic salon. He's the guy I first did 5-MeO with back in 98.
Is this the story you told of the ukulele player in Hawaii that had a
Yes.
DMT? He said
Yeah.
his near-death experience was the exact same as his 5-MeO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I asked him after he died and came back, after busting his chops, I was like, I said, you're such a loser. You don't even know how to fucking die right. You might as well just give up. But I said, I got to know, is 5-MeO, that experience, is that a rehearsal for dying? And he went, oh, yeah. Because he was gone for like 6 to 10 minutes. And he described being in that state of sort of pure awareness, no sort of physical trauma, emotion, and just being awake and aware. And that's a guy who died and came back and did a lot of 5-MeO. I think he visited a lot. So I like to think I've had tons of death experiences on 5-MeO and ayahuasca.
That's actually a
Somebody,
common thing too. People that have, I've had my own near-death experience. My heart didn't stop, but I lost
yeah,
consciousness and lost a lot of blood.
yeah,
I think when your heart stops, I think that it's kind of a different animal than when you're still like your heart's pumping, you still have a pulse. But when you
yeah.
lose the function, I think you do go to some other thing, some other place. My mom had one of those traditional near-death experiences, giving birth to my younger sister.
Uh-huh.
And she went places and saw people, and so
Yeah.
I think that there's something to that. But I think what a common theme is, this is what I was going to get to, is people that experience that almost have like they wanted to stay there, and when they come back, they're
Yeah,
like
that's what he said.
they long for that to
Yep.
go back there almost.
He said that, and then he said, but then part of him said, no, it's not time yet. And then he came back. And for me, with all the stuff I've been through, I'm not in any hurry to die, but part of me is really looking forward to it. What's
It's a
out there,
real
man?
love story.
Yeah, yeah. I'm dying to know. And what, you know, I'm in good shape. I'm in really good shape, but I'm still getting older. So I have my aches and pains like we all do. And sometimes the good thing about going to bed at night is just getting a break from all that stuff, right? So part of me thinks that stepping out of three-dimensional reality as we know it. And so it's part of the great mystery. And I'm anxious to see what's waiting for me. I think it's infinite. Um,
All right,
I think all bets are off.
I like it. Now,
Yeah.
this is the controversial last question that I've been interchanging in and out. But I think I'll settle on this because I think that this is something that everybody thinks about. This is a quote I love, probably one of my all-time favorite quotes from Arthur C. Clarke. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Do you think there is life elsewhere in the universe, or do you think we are alone?
No question. Infinitely expansive and then some. We're just microbes in the big picture. You look at all those stars out there and galaxies. And one of the things I've always, because I've written a fair amount of science fiction too. One of the things I love to speculate on, and I may have even read it somewhere. We know here on planet Earth we exist with a certain amount of oxygen and water and other elements that we need to have a healthy environment to exist within and grow and all that. But in other places, Maybe there's another culture that breathes methane, or they live on ammonia, or I mean, it's infinitely possible for infinite permutations of intelligence and awareness when you look at the vastness. I mean, just our sun. We're just part of its freaking little solar system in a galaxy of a gazillion galaxies. I mean, and then if you think about it from the holographic perspective, it's even more fascinating because as far in as it goes is as far out as it goes. And it just keeps I like to think of it in that multifaceted, infinitely holographic permutation of ultimately mathematical perfection. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love sacred geometry so much. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't deny it. You can't deny that it's in your fingers and in your hands and in your body and, the Fibonacci spirals and all of that and the way that the math works out. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. When you look at, I can sit there all day and write about all the visions I've had in ayahuasca. I still could never adequately describe the colors I've seen. There's nothing that comes close to, I can visualize them in my mind, I can remember them, but that's something you can only experience firsthand because it's beyond normal perception, whatever that is, right? So I
No,
think that,
totally.
I think everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And it's all intertwined in a big loop of infinity. And it just goes on far, far, far beyond any comprehension we think we might have. We're just freaking fetuses. We don't even know if we're fetuses. We're like microbes, man. I mean, it's so big. And to become, to grow, spend your life working to grow your awareness by exploring your consciousness. How far can you go? Now, how many people never get that far or never even get off on the right foot? Or they stay stuck at being emotionally 3 years old their whole life. I've seen 90-year-old people who are like 3, emotionally, petty or whatever, or bitter or not, or all of those things. And you can't really define it, which is one of the greatest beauties of it all. I remember years ago walking into a spiritual bookstore in LA, and this Swami Guru guy was talking. I can't remember his name or nothing. And I just walked in at the beginning of his talk. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, "You have asked me to come here to speak to you of God. But as soon as I open my mouth, I'm lying. Because I can't even begin to define what's so vast and indefinable and infinite that one utterance is a lie." And he did his whole talk like that. It was really great. It was nice to hear. His delivery was great. Anyway, it's all infinite. I always tell people, you come across somebody and if they tell you they're enlightened, run. Because they got stuck and they got caught and they're in some freaking kind of ego trip. It never ends. And the more, in my experience, the more I become aware of, the bigger the problems I have. And the more responsibility I have for screwing up, the greater consequences because I know better. And that's sort of part of the path if you're trying to expand yourself, and become more aware. Because in the end, it's about expanding awareness. And expanding awareness is expanding consciousness. And what do they say? Where your attention goes, there your energy goes. Yeah. And to me, the whole path is learning to master energy, period. Because in the end, everything is energy. That's my...
So you're saying you believe there's life out there? No, I'm just joking. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
I think
no.
so.
And to your point too, I think early on in your answer you mentioned living on, in organisms and ammonia and methane, and they've actually found. So, like, I don't know. I mean, there was a study or a paper like 5 years ago, maybe, where they found phosphenes on the clouds on Venus, which would indicate it's like something that only life produces.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if anything ever came of that. And then recently, I don't know if you've been paying attention, they found like super ancient trace evidence of life on Mars. So, I mean, that's kind of got lost in the news cycle, but what hasn't, right? So, but yeah, to your point, I think that, if you're talking about extremophiles, we don't even fathom, you even look at something like a tardigrade or a water bear. This thing can survive a nuclear blast and hibernate, and then, so yeah, there's all sorts of things. And I definitely agree with you. There's got to be stuff out there. So, but listen, you answered all my questions. I appreciate it. And consider your mind melted.
Oh, good. I've been trying it all my life.
I just want to get a couple things in before we wrap it up. I do want to talk about your new book, Drug Wars, A New Dope. Can you maybe describe that a little bit? Tell us what it's about.
Yeah, it's my first long-term comedy. Some of my short stories have weird little comedic twists here and there, but it's a comedy. It's a Star Wars parody. And it starts out a long time ago in a cannabis field far, far away. And there's a Rastafarian-looking guy standing next to a big waving field of great cannabis. And he looks down and he sees a mushroom. And he picks up the mushroom and brushes it off and he eats it. And this is all happening at sunset. And the cannabis starts kind of moving around the way they do when mushies are happening. And then he starts moving forward along with the sunset. And he goes across the field and up. And then it goes into it. They call it a scroll down, I think. You know how the movie starts? And it starts off with that with the story. And in the story, the corporate empire are after the Rasta underground growers because they're trying to rule cannabis production throughout the galaxy. And so the rebels, the star is a Dude Dope Toker, and there's Doobie One Kenobi and Hash Stoner, a Princess Sinsamia. Her hair looks like a big cannabis bud. And they're trying to crush the Rasta underground growers.
Please tell me there's pictures too.
Well, it's a perfect graphic novel, and I wrote the script.
No, I know,
yeah. So the ultimate weapon that the corporate empire has, by the way, it's Ronnie Reagan, the dank spliff lord, and the Empress Nancy. And their weapon of destruction is the death bong. It looks like a huge penis, and it shoots a paraquat ray that blows up the planet Tryptamine. The robots are 5-MeO and 2CB. The ship is the Pineapple Express. And Dude Dope Toker has to use the buzz, and it's the Red Eye Knights and the inferior crack smokers. And Dude Dope Toker, and all the fighters are vape pens. And all the ships are like different kinds of pipes. So Dude Dope Toker has to learn how to use the buzz. And he has to learn to fly his vape fighter up to the rectal port of the death bong. And the rectal port is a carburetor that a bong has. But they call it the rectal port. And he has to guide his vape fighter using the buzz to fly through the twin testicle towers to shoot the plasma into the rectal port of the death bong to blow it up and save the empire.
Classic.
So, yeah, there's stuff like when they have to sell his weed speeder from the planet, they go to Hoffman's used bicycle lot, and the barroom scene is Leary's Lounge. It says turn on, tune in, and drop off. There's all kinds of little inside jokes. You know, Hash Stoner says, my ship has a record for getting to the cannabis galaxy in 8 bong hits. They don't shoot people; they smoke them. The whatchamacallit, the swords, the Jedi
Lightsaber.
lightsabers, they're pipe lighters. And it's tons of psychedelic stuff, like the little 2CB robot. He also has like roach clip extensions and like bong extensions and
Are there
all that.
Ewoks?
Yeah, those are the blunts. They call those the blunts. And they catch them so that when they're inferior crack smokers, they smoke all the blunts, right? And when they get put into the big crawler, the weed crawler, when the robots get captured, they're forced to be trimmers. They're all trimmers. So there's all kind of. I had so much fun with it.
This
And even
is
the squadrons.
some in-depth satire, that's for sure.
Yeah. The squadrons when they're fighting, they're like Blue Dream, Panama Red.
What about Jabba the Hutt
What do I call him?
or Boba Fett?
But what did I call him? Not Jabba the Hutt. God, I can't think of it now. Bubba the Kush. He's Bubba the Kush. Yeah. And then the Wookiee. He's an OG Kush. So in the movie he kept calling him whatchamacallit. In the original movie, the Wookiee.
Chewie.
Yeah, I call him Chewie. So in this one, it calls him OG. And the robot's MEO, and the other one's 2C, and he does all kind of crazy stuff. I just had a lot of fun with it.
When does it come out?
November.
Okay.
Yeah, it's available for pre-order now. It's short. I wrote the script, and I actually entered the script in a comedy competition. It was a quarterfinalist. So I decided to adapt the script into a novel because I've done novels into scripts, but I hadn't gone the other way. So that was a great exercise, and I had fun with it, and I had fun narrating it. And getting it all done. So it's all ready to go.
Yeah, I'll have to listen to that one, that's for sure.
Yeah, if you bug me, rattle me up the road, I'll send you a promo copy.
And then do you have a working date for the ayahuasca book, and do you have a working title too?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Ayahuasca, the Mother of All the Plants. I've had that's the working title. I've gone through a few of them, but I said I want to include some of the plants, or maybe almost all of them that I've worked with, and my experiences with them, as well as the taxonomic information and the proper naming and all that. So I want to do that. And the whole idea of mother and mother nature and plants as teachers and bringing the technical, for lack of better words, the technical knowledge and history along with my personal experience.
Pachamama.
Yeah, Pachamama. Some of the native names, Yahe and different tribes have different names for it, and I've included a couple of the other plants. But I want to show that whole relationship of plant helpers, with ayahuasca being the mother, which is what I was told years ago. And some of the mythologies and even a lot of the creation myths of some of the indigenous tribes with their relationship, they credit ayahuasca with sort of the beginnings of the world. And, it's always associated with like the anaconda, which is often seen in visions, and snakes. And snakes are associated with the rivers like the Amazon and all the tributaries.
Yeah, I mean, snakes, the iconography throughout history, fertility and life. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Even wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah.
The whole freaking Adam and Eve, right?
Well, Listen, bro, it's been a pleasure as always. Let's wrap it
Always.
up here. We've been talking
Yeah.
for a little over 2 hours now, and never feels that long. If my ass wasn't asleep, I'd try and go maybe a little bit longer, but
Yeah, we're good. We don't want to burn people out.
well, I was on hiatus. I got to get back in ass shape, I call it, where you're sitting in a chair talking for a few hours, but
that's why I go to the gym.
I'm going to be using that Theragun on this thing later. Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. You're always a wealth of knowledge, and you've always got interesting insights into things and different takes than a lot of people. And I love picking your mind because, you are such a creative person. And yeah, that's kind of losing its, we talked about AI and everything, and creativity is at a premium. You look at what's out there, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or whatever, a lot of stuff's recycled shit or, like the same takes on things. And just, so when you write from personal experiences in these unique places and relationships and things like that, I think it does matter, and we need more of that in the world. And hopefully, we can find a way to maybe use AI or technology to do the stuff we don't want to do, so we can fulfill our creative destinies, if you will. That would be my ultimate future. Yeah,
use it all wisely if we can. Well, all I can say is it's all for you. And I wouldn't do it if you weren't here and other people weren't here to listen to my babbling. Then I wouldn't have any purpose.
No, bro, we love your babbling. You got to keep babbling. It's going to lead somewhere. And I'll
try to keep my head from getting too big.
No, but seriously, I'm looking forward to a new dope and listening to that audio, because I don't think I've ever listened to your audiobooks yet, so that should be interesting. And then, I'm really psyched for this ayahuasca one that you've got coming. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a good one.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap it up the same way I wrap up all episodes, which is we love everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Peace. If you would like to support Mind Escape, there's many ways you can do it, but the best way to do it is to click the LinkTree link down below. I have everything from merch to our Patreon page. Our Patreon, by the way, I archived a lot of the Mind Escape 1.0 episodes on there. There is still some available on our YouTube channel and our Spotify and Apple Podcast. However, like I said, if you're looking for a specific older episode, it might be on our Patreon, which has been archived, and it's $2 a month. And there's also exclusive content on there as well that was never released to any other platform. So please go check that out. You can also check out our documentary that Maurice and I made a few years ago called As Within, So Without, From UFOs to DMT. That is available on there as well. There's also a director's cut. Please click the subscribe button and follow us. And if you're listening on an audio platform like Spotify, we do have video on Spotify as well. And please leave us a nice review. We would really appreciate that.